The lightsaber is sort of a spiritual weapon, an extension of one's very will, for a Jedi or a Sith, as both orders are synonymous with the use of the saber. In fact, both the Jedi and the Sith both contributed various alterations to the lightsaber that resulted in the lightsabers that we see today. In fact, it was darkside wielders that created some of the first lightsabers known as Force sabers, and later the Jedi would perfect it, creating proto-sabers, with both orders making advancements. But there was a period in time where the Sith did not wield lightsabers, and the Sith actually believed that the lightsaber was an inferior weapon to another, with many of them outright disliking the lightsaber, and it wouldn't be till later that the saber would come back to prominence within the Sith Empire, and many would consider it a superior weapon as to others. But still, there was a group that refused to use a lightsaber, as they held a special connection to another weapon forged by the dark side. Originally, at the dawn of the Jedi Order, the Jedi did not use lightsabers themselves, but force-imbued weapons, most commonly sword. Dark Jedi at the time would wield dual-bladed swords, again imbued with the power of the Force. A Jedi Knight would imbue their will and power into their swords, again making it a literal extension of themselves and their spirit, making it far stronger than a normal melee weapon. But again, Dark Jedi would imbue their hatred and the dark side into their very dual-bladed sword. But the Sith had their own process of creating a weapon far more powerful than the Force-imbued swords of the Dark Jedi and the First Jedi Order. The Sith used dark side or Sith alchemy, literally using the dark side of the Force to forge weaponry. These Darksiders would use Sith sorcery and Sith techniques to empower their weapons of choice, creating long, complex rituals, all designed around making their swords more powerful and more connected to the dark. It was during this era of Star Wars history that the Jedi began developing and advancing the lightsaber, creating a proto-saber. Although a proto-saber had a massive drawback, it had a cable that was attached to a battery pack, as the lightsaber required a constant flow of energy in order to remain activated. The Sith absolutely despised this weapon at first, believing it completely inferior. They wanted to feel the warm blood splash upon their face when they cleaved through an enemy, and continued to advance their own weaponry, swearing off a proto-saber entirely and calling it weak, just like the Jedi that wielded them. The Sith of this era would even take their advancements a step further, integrating talismans and more complex rituals into creating their Sith sword. In order to fully bring a Sith sword to its true capacity and potential within the Force, a dark side wielder would imbue literal parts of their soul within their weapon, making it a true and realized extension of themselves, and therefore they were able to use the Force with it. Ask me the secrets of Sith alchemy, and I would ask you for 3 measures of blood, 1 from a person you love, 1 from a person you hate, and 1 of yourself. A Sith sword is enhanced by submerging it in a trough of blood spilled in anger. Grinding its edge with Svolten Rhyolite will ensure that the blade never dulls. As I mentioned, because of this deep connection between the wielder and constructor, they could actually channel dark side powers through the sword itself, conjuring force abilities like Force Lightning from the blade itself. Despite all of these advancements in Sith alchemy and with Sith swords though, the weapon would soon become inferior to a lightsaber, at least when massive battles are concerned. Lightsabers became more easily produced, they were more easy to create and actually wield in active combat, and the heavy armor that the Sith Lords wore was completely nullified by the lightsaber themselves, as again the cutting power far exceeded the strength of the armor, and a sword simply became inferior in large battlefield situations, although one-on-one the sword will likely have the edge over a lightsaber. In order to level the playing field once again, the Sith Lords resolved to finally use lightsabers, despite their centuries of hatred for the weapon. Quite interestingly, it was the Sith that would advance and further the lightsaber even more, getting rid of the battery pack and creating an internal power source for the hilt, again evening the playing field between the Jedi and the Sith. And it was during this era where lightsabers were largely adopted among the Sith Order, although there were still a select few that maintained that a Sith sword was superior to any lightsaber construction. But that is why in fact the first Sith Lords hated lightsabers and outright refused to use them. What are your thoughts on this? And what do you guys think of the first Sith Lords and their use of Sith swords and Sith alchemy to create and produce those swords? As always my friends, thank you guys so much for watching. May the Force be with you and have a great day.